Good evening, everybody. It's lovely to be back this week, having missed you all last week. I wasn't well, and I'm really pleased to say I'm back and firing on all cylinders. So lovely to be back. I hope you enjoy my topic tonight. As always, do let me know what else you'd like me to talk about. I'm here to deliver things and topics that are of interest to you and that you're going to get value from and take forward into your day-to-day life. So I'm hoping you're going to enjoy this topic. If you don't get to watch all of it live, then it'll be available to watch later on. It's always recorded here, and all of these videos go into my YouTube channel, Peyton Principles Natural Health. So tonight I'm talking about intermittent fasting. I'm going to explain a bit about what it is, where it started, the benefits it can deliver to your body, why the traditional way of intermittent fasting isn't something that I follow, and I don't feel it's an easy method to follow, and why I choose a different way of achieving what I believe are the same end goals and the same benefits in a way that's much, much easier to implement into your day-to-day life, much simpler, doesn't affect your life, doesn't make it hard to still go out and socialize and things like that. So it's become trendy. Most people have heard of the words intermittent fasting. Become very trendy in recent years, but predominantly it's become trendy because it's seen as a way to lose weight. So that's, of course, very attractive to people because, as we know, the weight loss market is absolutely huge. People are always looking for ways to lose weight. And so if they can find something else that's new, they're going to give it a go. So this is where it's become very, very popular. But it really came about that recognizing that when we are in a fasted state for extended periods of time, it brings huge benefits to the body that I'm going to go on and talk about. But first of all, the traditional way of doing intermittent fasting was, of course, eating in a restricted window of the day of, I think, a maximum of 8 hours in the day. But this was coupled, or still is coupled, with a very restricted calorie intake. And I've seen calorie intakes of 500 calories mentioned, 800 calories, way below what a typical calorie intake, not that I know how many calories I consume, but you know, if you sort of look at the typical guidelines of men and women of 2,000 calories, you can see that 500 calories is only 25% of your typical calorie intake for a man or woman. It's very, very restricted, and it can be very, very difficult to stick to, because who wants to spend a busy day or a day when you might be meeting with friends, having a meal out, and then worrying about how you're going to manage to only consume your calories that you can have. And you can find that your time is spent overly consumed, not consuming, overly spent thinking about what you can eat, what's how many calories are in that, you know, can I have that today, can I not have that today, oh, I'm going out later on, so have I got to starve myself till I go out? So it's very, very hard to implement and follow. Not much fun. I'm all about things being simple, but things will also be fun and enjoyable, and if we eat in a different way, you should still be enjoying your food. Now, the science behind fasting, and if we go back to ancient times, hunter-gatherers, we were spending lots of time in a fasted state. We were spending time in our cave, not consuming much food. Then we'd go out hunter-gathering, killing food, collecting berries, and then having a feast, you know, this sort of more feast and famine. What's been found is that spending time in a fasted state is extremely healthy for the body. It enables the body to get far clever at utilising glucose. So very good for people at risk of diabetes or insulin resistance, as we know, where the cells don't recognise insulin and glucose can start to get too high in the bloodstream. It can help to rebalance our fat profile, to lower triglycerides, and to lower the more damaging LDL cholesterol. We want more of the HDL cholesterol. So we can change that profile of fats in our body. It can help improve blood pressure. It's been shown to improve memory. And just generally overall, this sort of mentally and physically, this improvement in health. What also happens over and above this ability for the body to respond better to insulin and glucose is when the glucose levels aren't readily available, the body becomes very well adapted and really efficient at burning fat. And this is where, from a weight loss point of view, there's been a lot of research to show how this fasted state can encourage being able to burn fat much better and more efficient, becomes very efficient at quickly switching between burning glucose as an energy fuel to burning fat as an energy fuel. It's also very good at something that's known as autophagy. Now, what is also always going on in our body is the body's very good at clearing out damaged cells and then being able to generate and produce new cells. So from a healthy aging point of view, that's what we want to be happening. We want old cells destroyed and new cells being produced. So over and above the cells itself, some of you may have heard of the term mitochondria. Mitochondria are the powerhouses. They're like the battery packs in our cells. We can have lots of mitochondrial cells, like the cells by our heart, and in our muscles, and we can have less in other parts of the body that have less of a demand for energy. This is what produces our energy, and this is where we burn the glucose or we burn the fat in the mitochondria in complicated pathways. But in recent times, and I come across this a lot through the training that I do, more and more research is pointing to the fact that mitochondria are becoming damaged. And this autophagy approach, and there's something else that happens with mitochondria, it's called fission and fusion. But what happens is the body, again, within the cells, is very good and should be very good at clearing out these damaged mitochondria. Parts of mitochondria can get damaged and then they can fuse different ones together. So it keeps the body healthy. We can keep producing lots and lots of energy. But what we're finding in more chronic disease states, one that you may well know to be associated with mitochondria is chronic fatigue syndrome, but also things like Alzheimer's. There's a link between poor mitochondria function and Alzheimer's. And so what we're finding is when people spend more time in a fasted state, it enables the body to not just be clearing out the damaged cells, but also clearing out these mitochondria, enabling this fission and fusion to take place of the mitochondria to keep the body that much healthier and try and prevent moving more towards a disease state. And of course, going hand in hand with that, what's also being found through the fasted state is there's less inflammation in the body and there's less cellular oxidative damage. When we're burning energy, we create oxidation all the time, but we want to be able to overcome oxidation, neutralize free radical damage, and keep the body in a healthy state. So all of this is taking place in a very effective way when we move more towards a fasted state. It enables the body to be more metabolically healthy and enable it to age well. And of course, sitting over and above that, for many of us, what we tend to think about it primarily is about the losing weight, but we really should be focused on the other aspects more than that. One of the side effects of fasting can be, if you don't do it in the right way, which is why the method I mentioned is not my preferred method, is that it can lead to some initial side effects like headaches and fatigue and nausea. And I think it's because it's such an extreme style of eating. Not only are you restricting the window that you eat in, but you're massively restricting the calorie intake, and you're doing it quite fast and rapidly. This is all to do with poor blood sugar regulation, which I really, when I talk about this, or we're going to talk about, it's really important that you avoid putting yourself into a state that you're really upsetting blood sugar regulation, because automatically you're going to feel tired, you're going to have poor concentration, you could then get the headaches, you're just not going to feel great at all. And the people who really should avoid the more extreme versions of this, the one I mentioned, are those with perhaps your diabetes. You should get clearance from a doctor if you're going to embark on this, if you're a diabetic, people with kidney stones, if you're pregnant, if you're breastfeeding, this isn't the time to be focused on doing this. So my model is about time restricted eating. You may say, well, that's just what we've just talked about, but let me explain this a bit more. Because fundamentally, I don't believe in counting calories. This forms no part of the guidance and dietary advice that I give to my clients. I don't count calories. And let me just give you a couple of examples to explain why. If you were counting calories, gram for gram, the first thing that's going to go is the fats, because gram for gram, fats have twice as many calories, more than twice as many calories as a starchy carbohydrate, like a piece of bread. So if you were counting calories as your model, you would strip out the healthy fats like nuts and seeds. You'd go and eat a crumpet instead. But as you all know, nuts and seeds are far more better for you than eating a crumpet. But there's twice as many calories in those as you're going to get in a crumpet. Another example is, for example, if you're counting calories and you've happened to have had I hate to use these terms, but let's just say it's a naughty day. You've gone for a piece of cake. Nothing wrong with that in my mind occasionally. You've gone for a piece of cake. Oh my God, too many calories in that. Oh dear, I'm going to go and skip the meal. Do you do this, or do you know people who do it? I know people who might consider doing this. They've gone for the cake and they think, I can't eat my evening meal because I've used up my calories for the day. And it's completely the wrong approach to take, because you should still go and have an evening meal. Maybe you're still a little bit full from if you've had cake in the afternoon, but you should still have your evening meal and get your good quality protein and your good quality fats and lots of vegetables that we all need every day, each and every day, because you're going to get all your nutritional goodness from those foods. So I don't count calories. What I do, and I've spoken about this many times on my talks, is talk about my healthy plate ratios, where it's really important to make sure you're getting the proteins and the good fats and your non-starchy vegetables with only a little bit of starchy carbohydrate. And that's the way I encourage people to eat all the time. And when you eat in a time restricted pattern, you can still eat in that way, because let me go on and explain, but if you're eating, say, only lunch and dinner, you're going to eat in a way that is going to keep your meals balanced. It's going to help to keep your blood sugar levels balanced. It's going to keep your energy levels up. You're going to feel great. You're not going to feel hungry. It's going to be far easier to implement. You're going to be able to get on with your day without suddenly crashing and feeling low on energy. And yet you're still eating in this restricted window. What I tend to encourage clients to do is to focus eventually on an aim of an 8-hour window for eating with a 16-hour fast. So say you've eaten your evening meal by 8 o'clock at night, then you're going to build up to, and that's the key point, you're going to build up to 16 hours of fasting so that you don't consume your next meal until midday the next day. That's 16 hours. That is plenty. It's not designed to be going for longer than that. 16 hours is sufficient. And to do this, maybe a couple of times a week, maybe 3 times a week. It doesn't need to be set in stone when you do it. You can look at your diary, you can look at your lifestyle, what's going on, and you can choose the days when you think that's going to best suit you. But I do believe it's really important that you build up to this slowly. So if this isn't something you do and you always eat breakfast, don't suddenly go from from eating breakfast at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning to not eating till midday. Add on an hour each day that you try and do this, and slowly adjust to this 16 hours. Start with 12 hours, 13 hours, 14, build up to the 16 hours slowly. But always, always make sure those meals are balanced and you're getting the proteins and you're getting your good fats in those meals. And please don't count calories, because I really believe it's counterproductive to do that. And it's not my approach to deliver health to clients in that way. I don't believe that's going to deliver the best quality health for you to start thinking about calories. Try and focus on this healthy, balanced meals and slowly build up to achieving those 16 hours. If you find that by adding extra hours to the fast, that you're feeling a little bit shaky, a little bit dizzy, it's affecting your mood, then your meals aren't balanced, your blood sugar levels aren't stable, your body needs more time to adapt to becoming much more adept at creating this sort of blood sugar regulation management for itself before you go on to embark on trying to do any sort of time restricted eating model. You've got to get those meals balanced so that you don't end up getting the shakes, energy dips, concentration dips in between, because it's not the right thing to suddenly start to go for longer spells of fasting. A lot of recommendations say coffee is fine. Now, I don't think in an ideal world, if you're going to do this properly, in my mind, that you should consume coffee. You should try and avoid it. They'll say black coffee's fine. The reason why I don't think it's ideal to be having coffee is coming back to trying to keep blood sugar levels stable, keeping glucose under control, keeping the insulin levels under control, enabling the body then to adapt and burn fat is what we're aiming for. What happens when you drink a cup of coffee is it's a stimulant. Stimulants stimulate the adrenal glands to create this stress response and release adrenaline and cortisol. And when that happens, when there is a stress response, the automatic reaction in the body is to convert stores of glycogen to glucose and pump it into the body. So you're going to start raising levels of glucose in the bloodstream, which is not what we're trying to achieve here. It may not do it that much. Some people are very susceptible to a cup of coffee and what it might do to them, and some people get a real buzz from the coffee, so you've got to be really careful. I would try as much as you can to avoid those coffee on those mornings, and you can have it in that 8-hour window, but try and avoid the coffee. Stick to herbal teas. They're absolutely fine because there's no caffeine content in herbal teas. Rooibos tea, plain water as much as you possibly can, and move out the coffee to later on in the day. That can be quite hard. I know the other models will say coffee is fine, but that's my reasoning why I don't think it's the best thing to do. So of course, when you're eating in this way, you're not counting the calories. It's not restrictive in that way. You're focusing on the normal things that you would normally eat for your lunch or for your dinner. Or, you know, if it's your way of doing this, it doesn't have to be skipping breakfast. If breakfast is the meal that you love, you can have breakfast, you can have lunch, and you'd stop eating, I don't know, say 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because that will achieve your 16-hour window till say 8 o'clock the next day. Now, the final thing to think about here is snacking. And in my view, as much as you can, you've got to avoid snacking on those days when you're eating in this restricted window. As much as possible, I try and avoid snacking anyway, because when we're snacking, it does exactly the same thing of this roller coaster of increasing glucose, increasing insulin. You're on that roller coaster, really, keeping blood sugar levels not as stable as you would ideally want it to be. Going back to what I talked about, my healthy plate ratios with the proteins and the fats keeps you fuller for longer between meals. You know when you've got enough protein in your meals because you will not be hungry between meals. You'll have the energy to keep going. You'll feel great. And if it's an 8-hour window, yes, that might be a bit long to start with, and maybe you need a small snack. But the sort of snacks I'd go for is a small handful of nuts and seeds, maybe half an avocado with a little bit of cheese, maybe a bit of coconut yogurt with some berries, all very low sugar type snacks that are going to keep this sort of blood sugar level as stable as possible, but going to give you a little bit of satiety and fullness until you wait for your next main meal. Try and avoid fruit as much as possible because most of it is quite sugary. Berries are a very low sugar fruit. So you don't follow this model every day. I'm a firm believer in shaking things up. Don't keep doing the same thing day in, day out. I think your body needs to have a bit of a shake up so it doesn't know what's coming next. You know, when we were hunter-gatherers, it didn't know. It didn't know when you're going to get your next feast or when there was going to be the next famine. So I think your body needs to learn to adapt as much as possible. So maybe you do your time restricting 3 days on the trot, and then you might not do it for a week, or maybe you do it 3 days a week. I don't think you need to have a set pattern, and I don't think there needs to be a set pattern as to how you do it. Just do different things all the time, because keep your body on the toes, and that's how it's going to serve you best. First time you try this, try and find a clear day when you haven't got much going on. But you do need to find ways to keep yourself busy and mentally active to try and keep yourself out of the kitchen, because, you know, we're all into the same habits, and it can be very tempting to think, oh God, you know, I've missed my breakfast and what am I going to do? You've got to find ways of keeping yourself mentally active. You don't necessarily want to be too physically active when you first start doing this, although when your body is really well adapted, they say that you can run marathons in a fasted state. Haven't tried that one, and I've got no intention of doing so. So good luck with that. I hope you've picked up some useful tips, a better understanding about what intermittent fasting is, why it's a benefit to the body, but my own take on how to incorporate this in a really simplistic way into your life that will still deliver great benefits to you. Thank you for watching tonight. Have a lovely week, and catch up with you next Tuesday. Bye.